where we have this idea of how do I view myself, right? And I guess a good question can be to sit down and say, what does this mean about me? Right. And
Hmm.
again, I remember when I studied in psychedelic assisted, facilitation, psychedelic assisted therapy in the Netherlands, which is very much about how psychedelics has kind of disintegrated this sense of identity, right? And how we take everything personal and the internal models we have created of self, right? And very often it's very difficult to express these needs because of what we have made it mean about ourselves, right? The response that happened. So a good thing is always to sit down and say, hey, so if I get this response, what would I tell myself that that means, right?
That's right.
And we obviously do that in therapy as well, right? As part of the model to
Yeah.
understand what meaning people make out of it. But that's a good thing that people can start doing themselves, right? To gain a little bit more awareness. What do I
Right.
actually tell myself? Because once we can distance ourselves and not take this as reality, but just see that's how the brain interprets what's happening, we don't have to take it as reality anymore. And we can kind of distance ourselves, right? Which means that that response that normally follow that, right? The emotional response, somatic response, and reaction, we can slow that down a little bit and just kind of observe it and say, oh, my mind is telling me this narrative again, right? That I'm not worthy or whatever it might be that that meaning is.
Right. Or the narrative that if I get my needs met, it comes at the expense of my partner's needs.
Yes.
Right. And then, oh, I don't want to, again, it becomes, I don't want to take something from them.
Yes.
Right. And being in a partnership, a good partnership, a lasting partnership isn't it, well, there are times in order for my wife to get what she needs,
Yes.
I, I can't get what I need.
Yes.
That's just part of having kids and the dog,
Yes.
right? That's part of life. But it's not I can't ever have my needs,
Yeah.
right? We do at times have to trade off whose needs are getting met today,
Yes.
right? In the assurance that I know my needs are going to be met as well.
Yeah.
Like it's not one or the other all the time,
Yes.
right? Sometimes it's give and take,
Yes.
but knowing that I don't always have to give and I don't always have to take.
Yes. And that's where it's good to check in with our capacity, right? Because sometimes we do have the capacity to give and maybe even ignore some of our own needs. At other times we aren't, right? And that would be compromising ourselves. And that again come back to this checking in where I am at, right? And what's
Mhm.
happening internally to know, do I actually have the resources? And this is a very good point that again has been interesting in my own dynamic, right? To help my partner recognize and say, slow down for a moment and check, are you
Mhm.
doing this because you feel you have to do it to be safe or because you want to do it? And that's a
That's right.
good internal question to ask before taking an action and doing something for the other, right? Do I
Yeah.
want, and sometimes when we have spare energy, we want to do it. Sometimes I feel fresh and good and I want to give my partner a massage, and it's great to see her relax, fall asleep, right? And feel
Right.
good. And sometimes it's good to just slow down and say, well, hey, do you actually want to do this as because you're feeling some anxiety, right? Or is it just because you have spare to give? And if we're feeling anxiety, it's good to maybe just slow down and say, maybe you don't have the capacity to do this right now. And maybe it's
Yeah.
better to say, I can't do this right now, but maybe another time. Because that way
Yeah.
we honor ourselves. And that's also helpful for the dynamic, right? We need to do both, honor our partner and honor self.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky thing what you're
It
naming.
is.
It's such a tricky
It
thing, right?
is.
Say, "Oh, are you telling me that I can say to my partner, I don't want to give you a massage,
Yes.
right? I don't have the capacity." And if I say that, my partner, right, in that moment is either going to say, I understand, right? Or they're going to lower their shoulder, drop their head, right? And have a response that goes, oh, okay.
Yes.
That deep sigh, all the things that says you've upset me, and then they get into the okay, no, no, it's fine, right? And then again, all right, off to the negative dance they
Yes.
go, right?
Yes.
But couples finding that way, finding that balance in their relationship, it's tricky stuff, and it takes a lot of
It
practice.
does. It
It
does.
takes a lot of practice and a lot of assurance that that responsiveness from our partner goes both ways. That my partner is assured that my responsiveness isn't just me trying to get out of it,
Yes.
but it's a real like I don't have that capacity.
Yes.
And the assurance that my partner knows that I'm coming back. This isn't me getting out of it to go away and stay away.
And that's it, right? Because that trust comes from also having experienced you respond to their needs. Then suddenly there is a trust that when you say no, but of course, if in general needs are never responded to, you're right, there probably wouldn't be the
If
trust.
your partner has a need and you say, "Oh, I don't have the capacity," every single time, they're gonna eventually go, "No, no, no, no. This is about you, not like just avoiding something.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk. Like, we got to talk about that, right?"
Yes.
But I mean, John Gottman, right, who does great research. He's got a book called The Science of Trust, and you don't need to read it because it can boil down the whole book in a single phrase, which is what he uses, right? With trust is repeated acts of trustworthiness.
Yeah.
Right? It's responsiveness.
Yes.
It's predictability.
Yeah.
That's what trust is.
Yes.
It's, if you go away, can I predict you'll come back?
That's right.
Right?
And
That's okay then. Then I don't get so afraid you're leaving.
that is so spot on because, I always say the brain is a predictable organ. It's a social organ and a predictable organ, meaning it's meant to help us be social, right? Because that improves our survival. And it's also meant to try and predict the future, meaning it's constantly running everything that happens through previous models to try and predict what might happen. And that can work in our favor. Like I don't have to figure out how to open a door every time because I have a predictive model. But
That's right.
but it can also work against us if the predictive model is other people are gonna be hostile or whatever it might be, right? But it's so spot on that it's all about predictability. And
That's
the
right.
more predictive model we can create in our relationship, the more there is that sense of safety, right? If they know this is what I can count on from you to respond, right? And that means I can also trust if something deviate, that doesn't mean that this normal predictive model suddenly isn't there anymore, right?
That's right.
So I think that's such a key, which is why consistency is so important, right? We said consistency making time for each other, consistency doing small acts of gratitude, right? It's all about the consistency, not about the big flashy gesture. Yes.
Right. So even if you're trying to make up for years of neglect through a flash in the pan,
Yes.
it actually the brain will register it as a completely different event,
Yes.
unrelated to all the little things that were missed.
Yes.
Right. But once you start showing up in those little moments, right? When you start saying to your partner, "Hey, I need a minute,"
Yes.
and you return,
Yes.
right? If you say, "I need a minute," and you don't come back, that's another thing you're teaching your partner, which is when my partner goes away, I can't trust them to come back.
Yes.
So then your partner's going to chase you because
Yes.
that's the predicting model, right?